think about. Death is swept under the carpet in our culture. In the hospital, they try to keep you alive with utter desperation. They won't take the mockery. Well, of course, we've made death howl with all kinds of ghouls. We've invented dreadful afterlife. I mean, the Christian version of heaven is as abominable as the Christian version of hell. Nobody in church forever. They try to keep you alive, utter desperation. They won't know the mockery. Well, of course, we've made death howl with all kinds of ghouls. We've invented dreadful afterlives. I mean, the Christian version of heaven is as abominable as the Christian version of hell. Nobody wants to be in church forever. think about. Death is swept under the carpet in the hospital. They try to keep you alive utter desperation. They won't know the mockery. Well, of course, we've made death howl with all kinds of ghouls. We've invented dreadful afterlives. I mean, the Christian version of heaven is as abominable as the Christian version of hell. Nobody in church forever.
I'm an alternative wedding vendor. I'm gonna get you a bounce house for your wedding. I'm an alternative wedding vendor. I love that you want to have a first sword fight instead of a first dance. I'm an alternative wedding vendor. We're gonna have a drag queen MC. I'm an alternative wedding vendor. We're gonna get your whole polycule involved in your wedding day. I'm an alternative wedding vendor. Hell yeah, you can have your wedding at a haunted house. I'm an alternative wedding vendor. I know which chairs fit fat bodies. I'm an alternative wedding vendor. Of course we're gonna have an introvert corner. I'm an alternative wedding vendor. You never know what color my hair is gonna be at your wedding.
A perfect business for Clint's polycule. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings.
Has
My
he
name's
popped
Luke
the question?
Rudowski here of the best bestpoliticalshow.com. As of course, we are going to be going live for the next 2 hours with all the latest breaking news happening right now. As of course, we are getting the articles coming in that the United States is preparing weeks of strikes and cyber attacks against Iran. There's some really interesting news coming when it comes to the poll numbers that Biden allegedly is having over Donald Trump. As of course, the FBI now is warning about Chinese hacker. Will there be a cyber war? What is going on here, as some politicians are actually being arrested for going after satanic temple statues? Well, we're going to be talking about that, plus a lot more, as well as the latest video from James O'Keefe, which we actually have some personal insight about. So if you're interested about this particular topics of discussion, share this broadcast with your friends and family members. Again, we're going to be going live for the next 2 hours, and you guys get to participate in the conversation in many ways. One of the ways you could do that is by signing up to LukeUnfiltered.com. You could do that for less than $8 a month, and by doing so, you get the ability to call into the show and ask us whatever question you want. You could also go to mysuperchat.com. It is our own website. And then when you do super chat, your super chat actually shows up on screen. We, of course, will also be reading your super chats from YouTube and your Rumble rants from Rumble, as well, as your support is more crucial than ever for this independent media organization. As, of course, joining us for this conversation is the one and only Chaya Raichik, who's in some hot water with the ADL and NBC News that really doesn't seem to like you. But Chaya, for the few people who might not know who you are, how would you introduce yourself and who are you?
I am just a regular person who posted TikToks onto Twitter. And for some reason, it angered the left. Like, they literally lost their minds. Because they just can't handle seeing themselves in a mirror. And the second they open their mouth, they discredit themselves. So that's basically what I did. I exposed them in their own words.
Can you blame them for not wanting to see themselves in a mirror, by the way? You meet these people and you're like, I get it. I really do understand it.
The story of just how you got to where you are right now is a really fascinating one, because you were kind of pushed into this situation. You willingly weren't a person being like, hey, I want to be in front of the cameras. You literally got doxxed. There's so many interesting stories that you have, and so much work that you do that absolutely the system sees as a threat. So we're going to be talking about what the ADL just kind of did against you, probably on Rumble, where it's a little bit more safer to discuss these types of more controversial topics. But thank you so much for coming here. We also have Seamus, who showed up at my house randomly and won't leave.
Yeah, so my name's Seamus. My friends call me Luke's best bud. I'm best
I
buds
disavow.
with Luke.
I disavow.
I actually have a
shirt. We're best buds. I love my best buddy Luke, and I actually got him this shirt. It would really mean a lot to me if you put this on, because this is going to be my last night on the show for a while. So I thought that maybe I could, maybe it would be nice. Maybe it'd be nice.
Listen, that wasn't a consensual.
There you go.
What happened during the making of this?
Listen,
Listen,
put that on?
I'm gonna
Maybe the rest of
describe.
us should just leave.
Oh, the gift
Listen,
wasn't consensual.
Listen,
The gift
this
he
was
gave
not
me
a
wasn't
consensual
asked for.
touch,
Wow.
first of all. And I will tell you the full story of what happened before this photo was taken with Tucker Carlson on Rumble, where there's a lot to this
put it
story
on. Just put on the shirt,
that
Luke.
highlights specifically Seamus Coughlin just being a really bad man.
That's true.
We'll get into
and I can acknowledge that.
Luke,
But
I mean, if he's not your best bud, why are you wearing a shirt that says that he's your best
Yeah,
bud on that
there's
shirt?
literally exactly on the shirt. He actually is wearing the shirt. So could you just put it on? It's like my last night here for a while.
There's a lot more to this story than what you're being told. We're going to be uncovering it on Rumble, because I might just let some expletives off too, because I'm furious. All right, and you'll
Sounds like
understand
someone
why.
spreading misinformation.
I've literally done nothing.
You'll see why. And this is made in China too. Look at that. Anyway, Clint's here.
That's what you asked for.
Clint Russell, host of Liberty Lockdown, co-host of Tower Gang, which you should not subscribe to, and co-host of the Best Political Show, which you absolutely should pick up your phone, look up the RSS, go to Apple Podcasts, go to Google Podcasts, go to Spotify, and enter the Best Political Show. Hit subscribe. Do not miss an episode at Liberty Lock Pod on X.
Hi, everyone. This is Steph. WeAreChange on Instagram and Steph WRC on Twitter. Ready to push the buttons.
All right, we already have some super chats that I think are worth getting into. One from Based Joe saying, I'm just here to give you money. Thank you, Based Joe. I really appreciate that. Red Viking gave another super chat saying, I live in Bernie's dream state of Denmark. We pay 70% tax but get free things that we can't talk about here on YouTube and free other things we can't talk about on YouTube. And Luke, don't be so mean to your co-host. I'm the best.
Yeah, you're best
to the
bud.
co-host.
You're best bud.
And we'll have the struggle session in just a little bit here. As of course, I think it's going to be important to jump into the full story before we get distracted even more. As of course, everyone right now, on a more serious note, is awaiting the response that the United States will have against Iran. A lot of the groundwork has already been laid as we have this Daily Mail article detailing how the United States isn't preparing one strike, but weeks of strikes and cyber attacks joined in against their offensive against, quote, Iranian-linked targets after 3 Americans lost their lives in Jordan in a base that was targeted by a drone. Now, Tehran is also answering back and saying that they're threatening to, quote, have decisively respond to the United States actions. As, of course, a lot of people are saying Joe Biden is weak. A lot of people are saying Joe Biden's going to overreact here. What is he going to do? We don't know, but I think it's fair to say that this is not a good situation, and geopolitically will create a lot more chaos, a lot more strife, a lot more problems for the people in the Middle East and the people of the world than a lot of people expect it to be. What do you guys think is going on here, and how do you think the United States will respond?
There's been some unconfirmed reports that the Biden administration actually reached out to the Iranian regime.
I have that article actually pulled up here, and that there was a negotiation. We'll get into that in just a little bit, because I think that's another important component to bring up here. But this is the kind of PR that we're seeing released right now. This is the kind of information that is kind of seeing what is going to be the response here. And I think we're seeing these types of articles and we're seeing these types of leaks because I think they're kind of testing to see the kind of compliance of the general public and what they could get away with. Agreed. As we know, Iran has been a major target of the Pentagon for many years now. And now I think they're truly releasing a lot of this kind of hyperbolic information to see, okay, let's see what people will go along with. Will they approve of this, or will this be another moment like in Syria where Barack Obama tried to launch a war against that country but was met with significant amount of protests? That, of course, was one factor that allowed Barack Obama to back off the bombing of that particular country.
Well, that's exactly what I'm hoping we can do in this moment, is apply this a similar pressure campaign, because essentially what happened with Barack Obama is he was prepared because they had allegedly crossed the red line. Actually, if you look at that story, it appears that they did not cross the red line, and that was also a lie. But because the pressure was applied, he said, okay, I've heard the American people. I'm going to take this to Congress. Congress refused to authorize war against Syria, and because of that, we ended up avoiding what could have been a really cataclysmic war. My prayers are that that's the same thing that happens here, and Biden backs off, or at least he turns to Congress and then Congress backs off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. You brought up, sort of alluded to Syria and the red line and the sand. And this is something I remember a lot of people saying at the time, well, Obama has to do something about this because the United States has made these threats in the past and we don't want our threats to be empty. But is anyone sitting here today and saying we would have been better off as a country if we had gone to war with Syria? I, for one, am glad we didn't. Really hope we don't go to war with Iran.
And I think we could also kind of have that hypothetical with Iraq, with Libya, with Afghanistan, with Somalia, and all the other places that the United States got involved in. And then essentially, from my perspective, my point of view, stirred up a beehive. And then we're kind of angry that there's a bunch of angry bees everywhere that they financed, gave money to, gave weapons to, and then facilitated the larger facilitation of them becoming a larger terror group. And that's exactly what happened with ISIS, with Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, and a lot of these Sunni Wahhabist groups that have been linked to, of course, Saudi Arabia, have been creating a lot of havoc. And I think what we're seeing right now with Iran is this kind of creation of more sectarian violence between the Sunnis and the Shiites. Now, it's a very complicated situation. It's not a very easy situation to deal with. But with the United States now threatening action against the number one group that took down ISIS and Sunnis in the region, I think this is only going to spur up other countries and help them get involved in this. And then this could very easily just spiral out of control.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse because I know I'm probably just going to be retreading ground that we already covered on the last episode, but I just have no confidence that the United States government is going to be able to handle this competently, and I don't think the American people should because their track record is just awful with respect to intervention in the Middle East.
Well, and keep in mind, too, the State Department has been asked, including the press corps has been peppering them with questions. What evidence do you have to demonstrate that Iran actually orchestrated the attack on the American troops? And they've been very clear. They don't have that evidence. What they do have is pretty good evidence that these kind of militia groups that are scattered throughout the Middle East have been armed by the Iranians. But did they actually take orders? Was this an order from the Iranian regime to strike American troops? If that's the case, it's a much easier claim for Casus Belli that you should actually go to war. If that's not the case, which the Iranians just flatly deny, they say, we did not order it. In fact, they went so far as to 2 days ago saying, we're now instructing these organizations, these groups that like essentially we'll withdraw our support for you if you continue to attack American positions. So I think they do have some say over what these guys do, or at least they can apply some pressure. But you have to connect that dot and say, the Iranians ordered this. If you can't connect that dot, you absolutely do not have just cause to attack these people.
Well, if we're going to be using that kind of logic, we could also say the Ukrainians are acting on the behest of the American empire.
Exactly.
And the Russians could say, we got to strike back against America since it's the United States arming and funding Ukraine here. And Ukraine is launching attacks on our infrastructure, on our people in our territory. So if we're going to be using that logic, it's going to set a very dangerous precedent. It's going to set a very dangerous situation, as of course China's looking at this entire situation and seeing how could they benefit off of all of this. Russia's looking at this situation and being like, yeah, let's spur up more conflict in the Middle East because then the United States can't finance Ukraine and can't fight us as effectively as they have been in that specific region. So with this conflict expanding, there's a lot of neoconservatives, there's a lot of hard-lined Republicans that are just chomping at the bits to try to start this war with Iran. And that, to me, I don't know, it's foolish, it's reckless, and absolutely has no benefit for the American people or its larger interests.
Well, let me add to that. It's illegal. If you don't get congressional authorization, it's against the Constitution, but also it's unilateral. You're not even going to the UN. You're not even attempting to do this under the neoliberal world order, the stuff that we have to risk world war for all the time. The whole reason that Russia has illegally invaded Ukraine is because they went against these policies. Well, if you're going to do the same thing, well, then you're no better. So I just really hope that they ultimately back off. I mean, what are we describing here? Let's just cut to the chase. They're saying weeks of strikes against Iranian targets. That is war. You are declaring war without declaring war. The only way that the president is supposed to be able to defend this country is if it's under attack or immediate or imminent threat. You cannot possibly argue that the American nation, the homeland, is under threat from the Iranians right now. You have a bunch of bases that are in all these nations illegally, and they struck that, okay, but that isn't even directly connected to Iran. This is the most tenuous claim for a war with a major country I have ever seen, and I've seen a lot, unfortunately.
I just think even if we do have to do something, right? Does anyone actually trust that Biden is going to do a good job of it?
No.
He's the last person I would want to lead us into any kind of conflict.
Absolutely.
No. But I think he's going to be the chosen one that does so, mainly because he's not really there. And if he's not really there, and if he's a puppet, and if he's taking orders, what better way to push one of the most unpopular demands from the American people that they've been trying to achieve for a very long time than through this kind of puppet president? That's what I'm kind of worried about, especially in an election cycle where a lot of things are on the table, and they could just say, Biden, do this, or we're going to implicate your son, or we're going to make sure your son goes to jail, or we're going to put more political pressure on you. And he's like, ice cream? I get ice cream? Yes,
on,
Joe,
man.
You'll get ice cream. Just launch this war. He is the commander in chief. But like we found out through from the Trump administration, even as the commander in chief, if you give military orders, the military sometimes doesn't listen to you. As Donald Trump said, hey, get the troops out of Syria. The military is like, yeah, sure, we'll do that, buddy. They never did that.
And they lied to him about the number of troops who were there. Yeah, so they could prevent him. There's another point here. I mean, there's this old saying that you should give power to the person who wants it least. And I think that's actually how we should evaluate our foreign policy. We should allow people to declare war or lead wars when they are the person who wants that war the least. Joe Biden's a war hawk, and he's been pushing for war for his entire career, so he should be the person we are the most skeptical about leading any kind of war effort, because he clearly has no appreciation for the value of human life.
Yeah, I see a lot of this just spiraling out of control, as of course we have another article here from the Daily Mail describing the, quote, frightening rise of the Houthi rebels, as of course the Houthi rebels have been actively engaged in conflict against the major trade route in the Middle East. And now they are, of course, being linked to Iran. They're being called a major terror group, and the United States and the British government have already launched major military offenses against them inside of their own country, only, of course, probably radicalizing and mobilizing even more of them. As the Daily Mail has this graphic here that we're putting on video for you to see their, quote, rise. And, of course, when we see what's happening in the Middle East, it is a long record of just a lot of conflict, a lot of funding. And sadly, a lot of it is happening through arms and taxes that we paid for and we gave to that specific region. This goes all the way back to Afghanistan with the Mujahideen fighting the Russians. This goes back to the Iran-Iraq war when we were financing both countries, giving them weapons. This goes back to, of course, the fallout of Afghanistan that has a crap ton of American weapons. And of course, let's not forget the Syrian freedom fighters, or let's just, ISIS and radical jihadists that the United States also gave trucks to, with even American businesses on the side of them. There's a reason why there's so much conflict, and I think it's advantageous for the American empire to believe that they're doing a good thing by throwing a bunch of weapons in there. But now, with so many weapons going missing in Ukraine, the world is becoming more of a dangerous place. Now you have all these armed people. Now you're going to be bombing all these armed people. What do you think the response is going to be here? It's not going to be a good one, and this is why we are seeing the rise of the Houthis.
This is a perfect point to make, because the Saudis have been bombing and sieging the Yemenis for a better part of a decade with armaments sold by both the Trump and Obama administration and now Biden administration until it ended about a year ago. But what happened? I mean, we're talking about the Houthis. These are the rebels within Yemen. We turned them via basically a proxy war between the Saudis and the Iranians, with Yemen being the victim of it. We have now radicalized their youngest population into being totally militant radicals because they have lived in a war zone for their entire childhood. So it's like, this is the trend that we see over and over again. I mean, the pattern is repeated constantly. And instead of just looking at it and going, maybe we should stop this cycle. Maybe we should stop this cycle of creating these really radical militarized elements because they have lived their entire lives in a war zone. Maybe this cycle of violence can stop.
Hey, I don't get to have an M4. The Afghanis get to have an M4, and it's just absolutely disappointing to see our money, our taxes, go to that region and go towards arming individuals that, of course, are just going to be fighting and taking each other's lives. I mean, I hate to sound like a hippie. Another world is possible, and it begins with us not giving them a whole bunch of weapons, not giving them a whole bunch of money, and stopping a lot of this perpetual conflict that, of course, I think it's meant to be a cycle. We talked about this on the last show, I think very effectively, describing how essentially the United States military-industrial complex is a hammer, and they're trying to make everything out to a nail so they have something to do. What better way to do that than perpetuate this larger kind of war on terror, which is now also turning into a cyber war? As, of course, we have this article from CNN Politics describing how the FBI director is warning that Chinese hackers are, quote, preparing to wreak havoc on U.S. critical infrastructure. This, as he was testifying to Congress and detailed how for every Chinese hacker, it outnumbers FBI cyber agents by 50 to 1. Now, as we know, the Chinese do have a lot of people a part of their population. Is it really 50 to 1 when it comes to Chinese government hackers versus FBI agent hackers? I don't know if those numbers are true, but now we're going through a different kind of landscape where war isn't just fought with bullets, but it's fought with information. It's fought with computers. It's fought with denying infrastructure and information from getting through. And that's why the first casualty of war is usually the truth. It's usually information. It's usually journalists that get imprisoned, just like they did in Ukraine. And this is why independent media, I think, is more important than ever.
Yeah, I mean, I would also ask that question that you did. Is it really 52-1? Because one important point of analysis here is how are they defining hacker and how are they defining somebody actually being a government asset or working for the government in China. So, for example,
How would it even be knowable?
Well, so we saw this non-government actors in Russia purchased like a couple grand worth of Facebook ads, and we said that was the Russians literally perpetuating an active war against the United States of America, like even though these were non-government actors and they bought a couple $1,000s worth of Facebook ads. And so I wonder here, and I think maybe at highest estimates it was like $40,000 worth, but when we're talking about a country where the government essentially owns everything, you can make the argument everyone who is hacking there is a government asset. They are working for the state.
I mean, you can make that argument, but it's tenuous. I already did this rant the last time we had I'm blanking on his name, the dude from PBD on. Christopher Wray infuriates me beyond belief. Mm-hmm. He gets up there on Capitol Hill and he says, our hacking community is outnumbered 50-1 by the Chinese. Hey, Chris, you've been putting your FBI agents on a bunch of largely peaceful people from J6.
That's right.
Anybody that's been geofenced, you've been using all of your resources to go after these people. You've been going after people that protest at abortion clinics. You've been wasting all of these resources. You never stopped Epstein. You never did anything good with these resources that you have at your disposal. And then you get up there and you lament the fact that we're outnumbered by the Chinese hacking people. Like, it's your job, dude. It's your focus. This is on your plate. This is your responsibility, and ultimately, you're culpable. He ought to finish that statement with a resignation letter. Honestly,
I mean, good point. Well, but I think what you're not considering, Clint, is that what the FBI actually has to spend its resources doing with respect to its interactions online is putting profile pictures of cute girls on profiles that sputter Nazi talking points and then trying to entrap people.
that does keep him busy.
There's called sock puppet accounts.
Yeah, they seem to enjoy that a lot.
Don't forget about all the terrorists at school board meetings.
Exactly.
That's right. They have to figure that out too.
How dare those
And
parents
you, right?
want to know what their children are learning and being indoctrinated into? How dare they care about their education?
China's got like a whole battalion of FBI agents following her all over the place. I'm sure.
Is there
Most of the
something that you know
followers-
that I don't?
Most of the followers of Libs of TikTok are actually FBI agents, I think.
No, but the government does utilize other governments. I first heard about this story from Israel, sock puppet accounts, fake accounts of them engineering pro-government talking points into the discourse in order to make it seem like more people believe in one particular idea than another. Now we have the introduction of artificial intelligence. China's doing this. The United States is doing this. Russia is doing it. And this goes along into the kind of dead internet theory that a lot of what you're kind of participating in could be gaslighting financed by the state in order to try to lead you towards a particular thought or destination that you wouldn't normally have unless you had all these comments, unless you had the likes and the dislikes in a certain way where it would lead you to a destination that they want you to be at mentally. So when it comes to kind of cyber war, there's many aspects of this because there's a lot of people, including myself, who believe that there's essentially fifth generational warfare being launched against the Western world, specifically the American people, that is incentivized and very destructive, horrible behaviors that are leading to people not having families, not having children, essentially being sterilized and eugenicized in many different ways to the point where their generation, their lineage is gone. If you're someone like China, why wouldn't you prioritize some kind of behavior like that on, let's just say hypothetically, social media apps like TikTok? Why wouldn't you promote ideology that we can't talk about here on YouTube, especially when it comes to the snipping of you know what?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you essentially stop a population from growing and having cohesive, loving, family, strong units that, of course, would be harder to conquer and subjugate? Now, I believe the conspiracy rabbit hole, I don't know about you, Chai, I don't know how you kind of think about this. I think it even goes deeper. I think there's a bigger alliance between a lot of the tech oligarchs, intelligence communities, and China kind of working hand in hand in this. But that's just me personally. But it's hard not to see social media as a weaponized tool against the general public, especially with so much negative effects on it.
Chaya, I would love to ask you about that, actually. Do you think there's been, the GOP argument has been that TikTok is some sort of CCP, psychological op against the American people, or at least the young people here. You're obviously well known for your endeavors on TikTok. What do you think?
I think 100% TikTok, it's a weapon of war.
Interesting.
I will say, like, I don't know if China created it to be that, but they created it and it turned into this monster that they're probably now very okay with, that being a weapon of war in America to destroy us from within. 100%, I have no doubt. Yeah.
And what?
Well, I just wanted to add the way that the CIA worked with China, especially when it came to creating something else we can't talk about here on YouTube that spread all over the world and created a health crisis 3 years ago. I do believe, and this is my own speculation, I might be wrong about this, but from the way I see the dots being connected here, I do see a larger ploy that kind of does work together with all of these different agencies and organizations. I don't know if you would go as far as to speculate as much as I am, but I can't see it any other way.
I think that the elites in America are also in on it, obviously, they join with their policies, like even just what you were saying, that our population is declining, right? So last September, I think it was the only month of last year, but there were more illegals entering our country than babies that were born in the U.S.
Yep.
I posted about that today, and it's by design. It's
that was
100% by design.
Yeah.
And I think that they're all working together, and this is 100% planned.
Well, and this is a very interesting statistic you bring up, and it speaks to a little bit of what we were talking about earlier. Luke was discussing foreign policy and the fact that one of our big conversations the other day was, are they failing to meet their goals, or are they just not telling us what their goals are and they're getting what they want? There's this idea, there's an acronym, POSIWID, the purpose of a system is what it does. So when you look at what's happening in the United States, we do have a very low birth rate. People aren't having children, and we are importing people from the third world to basically replace people. Now, people say that's the great replacement theory. You can call it a conspiracy theory all you want. That is literally what the system is doing right now.
Yeah, whether or not it's an orchestrated plan, we can debate. I personally think that it is, but I don't have hard evidence to say definitively. But I do think that when you see more immigration than you do domestic population birth, you have to realize what that portends for the future of this country. And what it portends is a nation that is not filled with Americans that were born here. And what does that mean for our culture? What does it mean for our governance model? What does it mean for the election outcomes? These are all important questions that I think that the domestic population has to tussle with, no matter how uncomfortable it may feel.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
No, you're the guest.
I was just gonna say, if you do the crime of pointing out the facts, then you're labeled a conspiracy theorist,
Right.
or even worse, you're a domestic terrorist, or whatever whatever they want to call
And
it.
then they'll put you on the list with the ADL and the
Exactly.
SPLC, and I've been through that within the last few years.
Did they put you on an ADL list or
and
SPLC list?
I believe I was on both. I was on the official
Based.
list with Ron Paul and Alex Jones. But this is when they first started to do this, and they actually listed WeAreChange chapters that I had no idea about, that I didn't know even existed. So they helped me organize my organization better than I could, because what I just did when I started my organization, when we were a grassroots activist organization that was giving out information, that was giving out DVDs and flyers, was I just said, hey, this is an idea. Anyone and everyone could run with it, as long as you're not racist or bigoted or hateful or use violence in any way. I had very vague terms of services, just essentially safeguarding myself from anyone making us look bad in any way. And then a whole bunch of chapters popped up. I believe the SPLC labeled, was it 260 chapters all over the world? And I was like, wow, that's a lot of chapters I have there. And
That's so
I was
cool.
very impressed by that. I know the ADL is also targeting you recently. We'll talk about that on Rumble. I want to continue the conversation specifically when it comes to hacking, because I did find it interesting that the FBI is warning about hackers, as the U.S. Pentagon is literally talking about hacking the Iranians and going after their infrastructure. As we have learned time and time again, American infrastructure is in a point where it could be targeted. And if it is, there would be a lot of very devastating effects on the local populations, just like we saw with that gas pipeline a few years ago in the south of the United States, that, of course, impacted trade significantly. And you can just imagine if that happens on the grander scale, as already prophesied by Barack Obama-produced movies on Netflix. If you could think about it, how it could be done, just like the cyber polygon war games were practicing to it be done, you could see a big potential for something that could be down the pipeline that could be utilized, especially before an election. And I think it's safe to say that this is one of the cards that they're kind of looking at, being like, maybe we could play it, maybe we can't. Let's just see what the general public thinks when we release this information. And of course, we'll blame it all on China or even Iran right now, as they're kind of laying the groundwork of a larger cyber war that could be happening and could be affecting all of us. Because if you're Iran right now and you got the United States saying, yeah, we're going to launch cyber war against you, why wouldn't you try to launch cyber war against the United States, right?
Well, and then add to that the fact that they've seeded the ground with the Obama executive produced movie on Netflix, and then you have the Civil War movie that's coming out in a couple months. Shout out to Beanie Man for the Civil War reference.
He's very giddy now. He's like, yes,
yes, thank you.
I'm like, no, this is bad.
No,
Sorry.
in fairness, I think Tim, like, even though he talks about it a lot, I think he's bringing it up because he wants to avoid it, to be clear. So if he weren't, I would definitely be talking to him like, hey, man, you got to chill. I definitely don't want to go down that path. But yeah, I think that they're floating out a bunch, like, just the odds. Like, does anybody in this room think that something totally insane isn't going to happen over the next 10 months? Like,
No, everyone knows. We
Yeah.
can all feel it in the air. I mean, and how prideful of me to say, like, we can feel it. It's coming in the air tonight.
I know. I felt like Ian Crossland
Reality-
just walked in.
Yeah, I know. Well, man, like, I can, like, feel it.
Also, there's an election soon, so something has
Yeah.
to happen.
Well, that's
Yeah,
what I mean.
exactly.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like 10 months is the election.
Yeah.
Like, the October surprise this year could be one for the history books, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up this next article, and this is from Kim.com that shared a report that allegedly details how Iran rejected a U.S. offer to bomb them. Yes, you're hearing this correctly. Now, I haven't seen this independently verified, but the reports are coming in that the United States actually reached out to Iran through the Swiss embassy and asked Iran if they could strike one of their sites, and they would only do it to a location that Iran would approve of if they would promise not to retaliate. Now, this offer allegedly was rejected by the Iranians. We have Kim.com talking about it. We have Iranian news sources talking about it. Is this a kind of wag the dog moment? And what are some of the implications here? As Clint, you were bringing this up before we even got a chance to talk about the report from the Iranian news sources.
I mean, I think if this report is true, which obviously it's unverified, so we can't say definitively, but if it is true, this is actually really positive, because what it means is that the Biden administration, through back channels, is trying to not escalate this. They want to save face. They want to still tell the Middle East, we're the big dog, we're the boss, but they're giving Iran notification that, hey, we're going to strike here. We're going to make sure that it's limited in effect and casualties. Do not respond. If you don't respond, we can actually move past this moment and stop with the escalation trap. So for that reason, I hope it's true. And I'm kind of disappointed that the report got out, because it could have been a way for us to avoid a wider war.
Well, allegedly, it's the Iranians that released this report. And this kind of automatically, after reading this kind of news headline, I thought about what Donald Trump did to Syria. Because if you remember, there was Syrian gas attacks. And according to Donald Trump's own son, it was Ivanka Trump that went to her father, cried, and said, hey, Dad, can you please bomb Syria? And Donald Trump said yes. But when Donald Trump did bomb Syria, he specifically bombed an airport that no one was really using inside of Syria. And it seemed like this was a very similar situation, like we're reading about, where there was some kind of deal saying, hey, we're going to look tough on the world. We're going to blow up one of your, your airplane stations here. We'll look tough. You guys don't retaliate. We'll call it a day, and everyone will be happy.
Wasn't there if I'm not mistaken, there were some whistleblowers who came forward after the supposed gas attacks occurred in Syria and said that the information that led us to believe that that was the case was pretty much bunk.
There was a lot of independent investigators. There was a lot of independent human rights organizations, and a lot of news reporters, even from the BBC, that went on the ground and were like, "Yeah, none of this adds up. None of this makes
None of it
sense.
adds
Why
up."
would and they had no evidence providing it so."
And not just, I want to mention this, it doesn't just not add up with respect to the evidence that they provided and what these whistleblowers were saying, if we were going to take them at their word. But when you just look at Assad's motivations, like he saw what happened to Gaddafi. Why on earth would he want to use gas against his own people
when
that
he
line
was
had
winning the
already
war
been
against the
drawn?
rebel groups?
Exactly, like he was already ahead. It makes zero sense that he would do
Well,
that.
and that it was the declared red line from the Obama administration saying, if you do this, then you're going to go to war with America, which despite the fact that we're kind of a paper tiger at this point, that's still not something that you want. If you're a leader of a country, you realize that could be the end of your road. But
Yes.
let me.
There was also children that were specifically speaking out and saying, hey, some random guys just grabbed us and started pouring water on us and told us to cry on camera.
Yep.
That's crazy.
And those children were like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm okay. There was no gas attack.
This is kind of a tangent, but I gotta get this in. I watched the interview between Lex Friedman, Ben Shapiro, and Destiny over the weekend, and I gotta tell you, it was the most frustrating thing. They basically have the exact same geopolitical outlook, but what really blew my mind though is that Ben Shapiro's sitting there and he brings up the Syrian gas attacks, and Destiny doesn't refute it. Lex doesn't refute it. It just goes as still a given, and I think that's what's the reason I bring it up is one. Shame on all three of you. I can't believe that you haven't dug into this at all further than that. But also how powerful it is that the initial narrative, how sticky it is. That like once that is the propaganda push, the vast majority of people will forever believe that. Like there's still people in America that believe that Iraq had WMDs, and like it's just amazing how hard it is to unwind that lie.
I mean, even all that set aside, right? When you look at what happened with Gaddafi, which I referenced earlier, and you kind of look at Assad's position, you mentioned that the United States is kind of a paper tiger in some sense, and that's true. But I think what a lot of foreign leaders are actually very afraid of, particularly in this region, is not necessarily just direct political intervention from the Americans. It's rebel groups being funded by the U.S. government. When you look at what happened with Gaddafi, how brutally he was murdered in the streets. Now, the United States government can never go in there and do that, right? Like, our soldiers would not go in there and do that. But if you fund a very vicious rebel group that wants to tear that regime down, they will do that to you. And that actually makes more of an example out of you than direct military intervention might. And
That's what ISIS was, man.
Yeah.
It really was.
That's
I mean,
an interesting point.
It was formulated through the kind of remnants of what was the Iraqi military, and but also arming the moderate rebels in Syria. It's madness.
I don't know if you saw the Lex Friedman Shapiro Destiny debate yourself.
He was just.
I tried to watch 5 minutes of it, and I was annoyed right away. I was like, I don't want to watch this.
They obviously have a very their geopolitical outlook is very different. I agree on that. I did really enjoy seeing them go back and forth on the culture war issues and on Trump. I thought that was interesting.
We have some super chats we're going to go into, as of course we're going to go into the next story in just a little bit right after them, as we have one here from Based Joe saying that shirt is laced with seed oils. It does feel a little filmy.
You're being really
Luke,
selective on
don't
the chats
put it
you're
on.
reading. You're being really selective on the chats you're reading because there are a lot of chats telling you to wear the shirt.
Shannon Mullins says nothing, but gave us a super chat for the first time. Thank you so much, Shannon. Abergat Authoritarian saying super chat Tower R. Thank you. Shannon again gave a super chat saying E. Jean Carroll touched me. No proof. Going to sue. Good luck with that lawsuit. Just probably do it in Florida or Texas, and then you probably will be very fruitful in your endeavors. Lane Boy 63 says to Clint, his name was Vincent from PPD.
Vinny Oshana. My bad, bro. My bad.
Vinny, yeah.
Abrogata
That's hilarious. I love him.
Authoritarianism says Clint's a Fed and Owen Benjamin is his handler. Okay. Who knows? Probably. I'm not your buddy guy said crazy part is it's still only January. Yep. That's absolutely true. T-Dog said over 20% of the Irish population are born overseas. With current trends, the Irish will be significant minority in their own country in the next 20 years. Yep. Seamus, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably true. I've spoken to this in the past. I guess what I'm saying is true is the fact that most people who are ethnically Irish are outside of Ireland. I haven't really paid attention to their demographic situation, but people go like, oh, you call yourself Irish and you're born in America? It's like, I'm not bragging, dude. I'm not taking streak. Like, I'm warning people about the genetic issues I might have and the behavioral issues I might have as a result of the ethnic group that I come from. Right. Like, it's not a boast. That's not how you get street cred in the United States. Just so you all know.
Seamus has an Irish leprechaun card, by the way, that he uses all the time. It's like his privilege card. I'm not your buddy guy says February. It feels like a year has already passed. Absolutely. Time is just absolutely crazy. We got another Rumble rant that we can't get into here on this broadcast. Clint, you have something to say?
I was just going to say shout out to Josie who tweeted yesterday. Congrats to everybody for making it through the year of January. I'm glad we made it. I was like, yep, that's what it felt like.
It feels like it. It's absolutely crazy that it's still not even 1 month in, and already so many crazy things have happened. We got another mysuperchat.com from Lane Boy saying, just want to point out Trump finally attacked RFK on Truth Social. RFK had a good response on his Twitter. Also to Clint, did Ian vibrate you during his visit? How was it? Ian is still here, by the way.
Ian looked at him and
he's vibrating in the ether, but decided to take tonight off because he's celebrating and enjoying himself.
Ian is with me always vibrating in unison. We are one.
It's true.
Crash
they
Bandit.
actually both wear different Fitbits, and so they know when the other's vibrating.
They're
We've done an experiment and everything.
They're synced together.
We are synced.
Crash Bandit gave a Rumble rant saying whether cough was a weapon or not, it was used as one after it was out like TikTok. Changed my mind. Okay. Lane Boy.
Fair thesis.
Is he talking about that thing that you said we didn't want to mention?
Yes.
Because
think
all
so,
I
yeah.
will say, and this is Sir Francis Boyle, the author of the American Implementing Legislation of the International Bioweapons Convention, said that by definition it is.
Lane Boy gave another super chat saying, what's the short version of the backstory of how and when Stephanie joined WeAreChange with Luke? Stephanie, you want to go that quickly?
Sure. 10 plus years ago, worked doing an internship for WeAreChange, and I was a writer, part of a nice team we had going. We did some articles. If you look on my Instagram, you can find a link to that, and you can read and learn more.
Yeah, Don't Tase Me Bro was originally our editor along with Cassandra Fairbanks. And we had a huge newsroom. I think we had like 30 plus employees and writers. We had people from all different kind of ideologies arguing, and it was definitely a fun time. But let's change topics a little bit, as of course we have a story that I wanted to get into. And of course, this is from Vice that is reporting that a political candidate beheaded a satanic temple statue, and now he is facing charges. This is specifically the story about Michael Cassidy, a former U.S. naval pilot that destroyed a display of Baphomet that was featured at the Iowa State Capitol, and now he's facing charges. I thought it was popular to destroy statues, and of course a lot of people get away with it if the political purposes are on the right side of the establishment. But this guy gets charged here. I remember my original reaction to this because I was on Timcast when this story broke. My initial kind of reaction was like, hey, we can't be like the left. We can't say they did it, so we get to do it. But the fact that now he's being criminally prosecuted, I think absolutely highlights a double standard here that is absolutely unfair. And that's just the type of system that we live in now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, when you also think about the fact that like Satan literally represents every potential evil that could possibly exist, and the fact that this is being put up in a federal building or government-funded building, we're told we have to tear down statues because they represent slavery, or the person who the statue is made of had some accusation made about them years later. It's like, okay, well, all of those things, every form of evil that you might be able to attribute to another statue is literally embodied in the statue of Satan. And I know they think it's edgy and interesting and they're cool for doing it, but it's just there to make a mockery out of our system, frankly. And it's also there because they hate God. This is something I've said in the past, and it just becomes more and more apparent. Like these people literally just hate God, and they tell you that with almost everything they say.
And he was charged with a hate crime, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. I'm going to read up on the article right now. But
rude that he hates the devil. It was so hateful.
But it definitely does feel like there's a two-tier justice system because how many statues did the left take down? How many of them did they desecrate? How many of them do they keep spray painting and destroying all the time? And that action gets kind of promoted. This automatically makes me think of what happened outside of Trump Tower in New York City, where, of course, we had the city there literally paint Black Lives Matter outside of it. But if someone wrote a disagreeing political message, they would, of course, would be arrested. But the city could do it. The leftists could do it. But you dare express another political opinion that's not okay, you're going to be politically prosecuted, which I think is absolutely unfair. And the hypocrisy needs to be called out here because a system like that is so unjust cannot continue the way it is going.
Well, I just want to mention also, like with what you do, the fact that you're kind of posting information about what the left is doing and just quoting them using their own words and how they lose their minds because it loosens their grip over the control that they have over introducing the public to their ideas. You just go, all right, we know it's really important to them to introduce these small little things incrementally. So with a statue of Satan, I mean, that seems to me just the most over-the-top, insane way of saying the quiet part loud for them. But even with that, what they try to do is say, like, well, we're not literally Satanists, and we don't actually believe the devil exists. But what they don't understand is that actually proves that they are Satanists, because Satan always says the opposite of what God says. God says, I am who am. Therefore, Satan says, I am who am not. The devil's always telling people he doesn't exist. So by not believing in him, you are worshiping him. So they're acting like it's this ironic thing when they're doing exactly as you would do as a Satanist.
It feels like they're like testing the waters, right?
Yeah.
Like put up the statue, and I think they were kind of hoping for something like this to happen. So, I mean, I'm glad there's no Satan statue there anymore, but it feels like he played right into their plans in a way. And then a few weeks later, the state capitol in Michigan copied them, and they also put up a Satan statue.
It's so sad. I mean, I imagine they were going to follow suit sooner or later anyway, but you're right. I think they're kind of trying to slowly introduce people to things. And this is what I was touching on earlier with the impact that Libs of TikTok has had, is because what you basically did is you took videos that would only have existed in these more esoteric corners of the internet and that would have radicalized people further and further to the left in these small pockets, and you just showed it to the public. You didn't make anything up. You didn't lie about people. And for that, they've literally called you a terrorist. It's insane.
Because they want to exist in their own bubble. Like only people who agree with them should be able to see their content. But they don't know what to do with themselves when there's another opinion, when other people are seeing it. So
Perhaps an unpopular opinion, but I think the game that they're playing is, can we get the right to tear down statues too? So I would encourage you to be cautious. Yeah,
it feels like they were hoping for someone to go tear that down.
Right, but
then they got what they wanted.
But then what does that mean? It means that, okay, we're in this, like, the idea of Marxist revolutions is that you're going to tear down your entire history. Now, I'm not saying that this Baphomet statue is part of our history, but because you've now entered the same game of tearing down monuments and statues and things like that, ultimately it will then give them kind of tacit permission to go and continue in their process of tearing down American history.
I just wanted to really quick. I just wanted to make a correction. I don't think he's facing hate crime charges. Vice News is reporting that he's facing vandalism charges that could carry a 1-year prison sentence and a $2,560 fine. Just for clarification. Sorry, Seamus, you were saying something.
I was saying, like, I one of the reasons I disagree with that is because they don't need our permission to tear down the statues, and they never have. They just go do what they're going to do.
Yeah, but would you like that to continue?
It's going to continue until
but
we
now
stop
they can
it. That's
say,
the
like,
thing.
oh, you guys also tear down statues.
I don't know.
That's
I
also
don't
one
think
of the
that's gonna
things
affect them at all.
that happens if you travel a lot, like, and see the looting and the destruction of monuments and the destruction of history. That's one of those things to be super wary about. Like, I've traveled a bunch of places and I've seen that, and it's always sad to be like, yeah, this used to be like this, but you can imagine what it will look like before the looters came and everyone tried to steal everything or dismount it or just take away history. So it's super important to be paying attention to things like this.
And I'll say this. So I hear what you're saying. I do. And part of it is just that it is a statue of Satan, which for me crosses the line in a particular kind of way. But when I also look at it just pragmatically and strategically, I can't see how the path to victory is to allow them to tear down our statues and put theirs up.
Well, I agree. I agree with that. That's conquest. But I'm saying my argument is, let's not tear down these statues. And I'll make an even further step with that argumentation and say, if there is to be a statue of Satan, does it not belong in a government building?
It is a fair representation of everything that they do.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And the larger satanic
have a
blank group of really bad, sinister people. I mean, there's a reason the Podestas go to spirit cooking dinners. There's a reason they hang out with Marina Abramovich.
But that's why January 6th was the best day of their life for the Democrats. It is exactly what they needed because they're violent for years. And then finally they had something like, oh, look, the Republicans are violent too, even though obviously we know the FBI agents were embedded there. They push people to do violence. Like, we know all that, but they'll just deny that, obviously. And they could point to that forever.
Yeah, well, and it's so fascinating too, right? Because you look at January 6th, and even at the time, even when I first saw it happening and I believed the narrative, I'll be honest, I was a little suspicious that there was some federal involvement, but I didn't have that information yet, and so I wasn't going to jump to any conclusions. But it was obvious, even from that point, when it seemed horrifying, that it just paled in comparison comparison to everything that the left had been both doing and cheering for and demanding that you publicly accept for months on end. You just went, okay, there's no question here that this was significantly less damaging to our country, and yet it's going to be not only made into an equivalency, it's going to be the only thing that we're allowed to talk about, right?
We
January
knew right
6th,
away.
January 6th,
Yeah.
January 6th,
I was
January
with Tim when it happened, and like me and him were like, "Oh, it's a setup. They're being set up right away."
Yeah.
And I was like, I should probably go down there and videotape it. And then Tim was like, "No, that's a dumb idea.
Yeah,
they're
they're
going to set
setting
you up
you
too."
up. Yeah,
And I'm like,
exactly.
"Okay, I won't go." And
Only reason you're not in jail right now.
Alex Jones also on the bullhorn. Hey, this is a setup. Hey, everyone, go back. Get out of here. And again, he's being investigated.
And I know,
And-
wasn't there a report like yesterday that the January 6th pipe bomber was a Capitol Police officer?
Did
The
they
one who
finally get to the bottom of
discovered-
the
I mean,
pipe-
Thomas
the
Massey
pipe-
wrote that on Twitter.
I got to look up Thomas Massey, but I believe the reporting that I saw was that the person who found it was a Capitol Police officer. Now, who exactly left it, who exactly placed it there, I don't think is still known. But the speculation is that this was a kind of setup just in case if the official kind of plans, if the crowd didn't go along with what a lot of the agitators and federal informants kind of egged them on to do. Again, lots of this is just speculation. Really quick, Clint, finish your point because we have a James O'Keefe video that I want to get into as well. Should we just get into it?
Oh, I just want to say real quick that it's my understanding is that they actually had the cell phone data from the person that they believe actually planted it, and that cell phone data, despite all of the other thousands of people that were geofenced and tracked and persecuted and prosecuted over the past 2 years, that data happened to be corrupted. I'll let you decide from there.
Just like the tapes outside of the jail of Jean-Luc Bernet's
Oh, you're right. The
prison
person
cells.
who found the pipe bomb
Exactly.
was a U.S. Capitol Police officer.
So
There's another tweet. I'm trying to find it.
let's get into the next story before we move over to Rumble, and that is the latest expose by James O'Keefe that released a video with one of the top White House cyber officials literally telling him that the White House wanted to replace Kamala Harris and confirms that President Joe Biden is in mental decline. Here's a small
We need
clip
that
of the video.
confirmed?
It's
Did
like
someone
undercover
tell
video.
us?
Like the sky is blue. but to have it mentioned by someone
No,
within the
it's
White House
true.
is significant. Here's a portion of the video.
He didn't say Joe has a stutter?
So you're pretty high up in the government.
Yeah, I'm fairly high up. I'm good at keeping secrets, and so I manage 2 federal agencies, the State Department and USAID,
So when you say it's like security, like you're protecting
the networks of the federal agencies
You're
that you give all your information to.
the
I need a
mission
code.
is to protect
Right, yes.
information.
And we are like the president's voice when we go into meetings in terms of discussing and promoting the president's priorities.
Is he going to be the nominee?
Yes. And she will be the vice president nominee.
Yeah, I don't.
There was a debate about removing her from the ticket, but sadly they didn't. She can't keep black
the
staff.
fuck?
They quit on her in mass.
But with him,
I know.
he's got
I know.
dementia.
I know when James O'Keefe was saying that he has dementia, talking about how people are just literally leaving Kamala Harris's office since they don't want to work for her. And this is pretty significant, even though, as we described here, it's also pretty obvious. But great work on James O'Keefe. We were actually with him when he was working on this particular investigation, and I was like, "Hey, James, what's your disguise?" And he literally put on some glasses. And I'm like, "Dude, where's your disguise?" He's like, "This is it." And I'm like, "Dude, this is not going to work. Like this. What are you?" He's like, "It worked."
He's like, I'm Clark Kent.
I'm like,
No, that's exactly what I said to him. I thought it was hilarious, and it was one of these things where we saw his disguise, and I was talking to them about it, and I just started thinking like, man, this is just so awesome and so funny that like I want to like make jokes about it and do a video about it, but I promised him I wouldn't say anything to anybody, so I didn't. But good for him, man. He's really the guy had to start from scratch, and he's really doing a great job. He's really
I
doing
was
a great
impressed
job.
too because he was he came in and he's like, I've been talking to this dude on the phone for hours, like I just can't get him to say it. So the fact that he had to go see him in person to get this dude to actually admit it, but at least it was worth it. It was worth it, James. Good job, good work, brother.
Yeah, I mean, the video keeps going on for a little bit. It's a 13-minute video. We only played a small kind of segment of it here. I still haven't had the chance to watch all of it, but it's pretty incredible to know that there's people within the White House, people who are part of this administration that know, hey, our guy's not really there. He's not competent at all. The vice president is extremely unpopular. We really don't like her. We have to get rid of her. And they can't, but they still keep moving forward in this being our political leadership for the next 4 years. Are you kidding me? What kind of person, what kind of individual knows that they're leading this country in decline and saying, yeah, we'll just keep doing it?
Well, what I found remarkable is the part we haven't played yet because it's too long, but when asked about Michelle Obama and whether or not she would be a possible contender, and he said very directly that no, she watched the torturous experience that it was for Barack Obama, and that she has no interest in entering politics. So a lot of people have been theorizing that it would be her, and it appears perhaps, if this guy's right, that it won't be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, also, if you just imagine if somebody actually is president of the United States at this point, now that they've really gotten their test run in for Biden, if it's all just like a ghost administration where they're the face of the organization and then there's other people behind the scenes.
Is that not what this is right now?
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm saying. That's their test run with Biden. And that's something we've all speculated on for years. Is the president really the president? Like, how much are they actually doing? When you look at all the obligations that you incur by being in that position, you think, like, no one can do all of that. But to varying degrees, right, it seemed that some presidents had some control. And now with Biden, we just know that there's absolutely no way he's made any decisions at all.
Yeah, it seems like it's just purely a spokesmanship.
He's like it's like a pop star.
Yeah, or
it's like a pop star. Someone else is writing your music. You go on stage and lip sync. Like, your whole career is
But it's
manufactured.
always been like that, where, at least for me, when you look at it, and it's always like, oh, these people are super staged. Like, they're told what to say. I remember, like, when Bush would always scramble things and say things wrong too. Like, and everyone would just make fun of the presidents of the United States every time. Growing up as a kid, that's like what I saw. So I think that it's always been staged until kind of Trump felt less staged.
That's what I'm saying.
I think Bush played up on that. I really do believe Bush, who was educated in Yale and Harvard, was absolutely playing up this part in order to kind of excuse his larger aggressive actions against the American people. I don't think he spoke that way originally, and I think it worked kind of brilliantly.
Yeah, I don't know,
for
man.
them.
I disagree. I think to be an Ivy League student, you have to say stupid things. I think it's one of the requirements.
Well, and do really stupid things too, including sitting in coffins and doing unspeakable things with your buddy John Kerry. It absolutely is. I carried me and my friend. We did a visualization of what was going on. I had a Bush mask. He had a Dick Cheney mask.
That doesn't prove it for me.
We went outside Skull and Bones. I know it doesn't prove it to you, but we went outside Skull and Bones and we reenacted some of the alleged behaviors there after we confronted Arnold Schwarzenegger there, who also has some very interesting ties to Germans in the 1930s, by the way.
What?
Yeah, if you guys haven't heard this, we could probably talk about this on Rumble, as we are just 2 minutes out from a place where we could finally be able to speak freely about issues without any fear of censorship or our voices being destroyed by the technocrat gulag overlords known as the Susan Wojcicki mob here on YouTube. So if you're watching right now, we of course have the first hour of this conversation on YouTube. We also have it on Facebook. We also have it on Twitter. I'm going to be getting rid of all those streams, and we of course are going to be all going to rumble.com/WeAreChange. That is our website. You can also find us on thebestpoliticalshow.com, and we're on the front page of Rumble. So if you just scroll down, they're doing a partnership now with Barstool, so that's going to be up for the next few days and weeks. But once that is done, they're going to have their picks usually on top. Now their picks is in the middle, and you can see us live right now with Dr. Drew and Glenn Greenwald, as of course it looks like we got more live viewers than all of them, which is awesome to see the people coming together on Rumble. Again, we have a lot of subscribers here on YouTube, but we know YouTube is not a safe place for online content creators that want to have an open conversation. If you want to have a limited conversation, YouTube's great. If you want to just talk to the Kyles and Karens and to all the NPCs, it's great. It's perfect. But it's time to expand our ability to communicate with each other. It's time to expand our consciousness. It's time to expand and look at and discuss ideas that might be a little bit too controversial for YouTube. And the place to do that is Rumble. Rumble has been doing incredible work fighting for online content creators, standing up to governments, launching lawsuits, having to deal with major lawsuits, which now include a lawsuit against them from BlackRock. They're facing a lot of adversities. They're facing a lot of problems, but that's why we are standing behind them and telling everyone, hey, if you're watching on Twitter, you're watching on Facebook, you're watching on YouTube, go right now to rumble.com, scroll down, and you could see our video live in the picks category that is available for everyone right now. It is imperative that you guys do that. Sign up and, of course, click the subscription button so you guys get the notification when we are going live. We also wanted to remind members of LukeUnfiltered.com that, of course, we also will be going to your questions in 30 minutes from now, also on Rumble. Chaya, as we leave our YouTube audience, where can people find and support your work?
livesoftiktok.com. I have a newsletter that I send out every day, and Lives of TikTok on all platforms.
And then Seamus is the worstpoliticalshow.com, right?
I'm Luke's best bud. Hey guys, everybody.
The worst politicalshow.com. Literally, I bought that website for you. You're welcome.
I have a YouTube channel called Freedom Tunes. We just released a cartoon today about Ben Shapiro rapping. I do my Ben Shapiro impression. He drops some bars. It's pretty amazing. You guys should go over there and check it out. And if you like what I'm doing, please become a member at freedomtunes.com. You will get a bunch of extra top secret cartoons that only exist behind the paywall, as well as behind the scenes content. And you'll be supporting the show.
Clint Russell's the name. Liberty Lockdown's the show. If you guys want to support my work, libertylockdown.locals.com, or you can just subscribe over on X at Liberty Lock Pod. I also do a show called Tower Gang, which I'll be on at 9:15 tonight on Rumble. You should not watch that or subscribe, and you should not even pretend that you've ever heard of it. Steph.
This is Steph. WeAreChange on Insta. Steph WRC on Twitter. Professional button pusher of WeAreChange.
You know, I bought you a website, Seamus. And you're just not using it. And I'm so disappointed in you. I can't believe you're not using the worstpoliticalshow.com.
I bought you a T-shirt, and you're not using it.
So, well, the worstpoliticalshow.com is way better of a domain than whatever this assault on my physical body was. Again, I'll get into that in a little bit.
Best buds.
I don't know about that.
If Luke doesn't want that shirt, you know I'm going to wear it, right?
Please.
Okay.
I'm okay, Clint. You're fine. A couple super chats. Jack B
He
saying
secretly loves the shirt.
He loves this shirt. It's his favorite shirt.
Chai, whose team are you on here?
You should put it on.
That's not fair. Jack
She's
B
on the side of
gave a
friendship.
super chat saying,
Yeah.
Luke, calm down. Never! Abergat Authoritarian says, I almost tuned out, and then Clint comes out with a banger.